What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Dynasty by the League FFB. Today, we're going to be talking the perfect rookie landing spots here in the draft in the next month or two. So I got Brandon over here with me today. He's going to be a fairly familiar face for you guys that are a part of the league, but for some of you newer viewers, this might be the first time that you're seeing him, but a sharp Dynasty player. I will give him that. He is a reigning champion in one of my leagues. So we will be hearing from him. But I just want to say we're going to be talking about the top 10 prospects or my version of the top 10 prospects. So if you guys do want another video like this down the road, we can do that. We can do a part 2 and we can get deeper and deeper into the rookie class. But like I said, we will be drafting the perfect landing spot for these guys, and we're trying to keep it realistic. We're not going to just like draft everybody to the Chiefs. That's not what we're doing. So we're keeping it realistic. We're going to see how it goes, and let's get Brandon up in here and let's start talking these rookies, man. All right, man. You heard the intro. You heard what we're doing. And let's just, I mean, is there any questions? Is there anything before we get into it?
No, man, I'm ready.
Okay. All right. Then I'm just going to start it off. And let's kick things off with Bryce Young, quarterback out of Alabama. He is my QB1 in the class right now. I know you might say otherwise, Brandon, but I have him going to the Indianapolis Colts. I think that the Colts are going to trade up to number 1 and draft him. You have him going to the Texans. So tell me, Brandon, why is Bryce a good fit in Houston?
I just think they have a big need at QB. I mean, he's the consensus QB1 amongst most analysts. So I just think the Texans are in a better position to get him than anybody else. The Bears don't need a QB. I don't think they're going QB. And I don't see my team trading up for him. I don't think he's the guy that they are targeting at all. And he's similar to Watson, so I think they regret that move or losing him in general. So I think they want somebody similar to him.
Fair enough. Well, I have him going to Indy. I think for me, that is probably the best rookie landing spot for these quarterbacks. And I just think you guys have a solid line in Indianapolis. I think, obviously you guys got all of the weapons that people want for fantasy football. You got the Jonathan Taylors that's going to help it easy on the quarterback. They're going to make it so that Bryce isn't going to have to throw right away. Now, I do think he's the most pro-ready quarterback. I think that he's able to put the ball on a dime. But I also like the fact that we're going to give him Michael Pittman Jr. and Jelani Woods and even Alec Pierce. So I think Bryce Young going to Indy, there's good infrastructure there. There's a good supporting cast. And you guys are going to have to trade up to number 1 probably to make this happen because just like you said, Houston's looking at him at number 2. So I do like that. So that is why I have Bryce Young going to Indy as my best quarterback fit for him. Let's talk about CJ Stroud, Ohio State's quarterback. You have him going to the Carolina Panthers, and I'm assuming that is going to be at pick 9. And I have him going to the Houston Texans at number 2. Tell me why you have him going to the Panthers.
So similar to what I said about Bryce, I think the Panthers year after year are in the market for a QB either through free agency or the draft. And last time they had a great QB, it was Superman himself, Cam Newton. So I think CJ Stroud's build is similar to Cam. I think he has similar tools to Cam, and I think he's the best passer out of all the QBs coming out. So I think they trade up actually to get him.
Okay, so that was going to be my question because I was going to say you think CJ falls to 9, but it sounds like he's going to get traded up. How high do you think they're going to have to go to get CJ?
I want to say at least pick 5. They'd have to go up to at least 5th slot to get him.
Maybe make a move with Arizona at 3? I've heard that Arizona might be shopping it.
That's a good move too.
So
they don't
possibly.
need a QB.
Now I have him going to the Texans. And the reason why I have him going to the Texans is, hey, he's my second best quarterback in the class. I just had Bryce Young get traded up 101 to the Colts. Houston's ready to take CJ Stroud right there too. So I think it's a good spot as well. I think he's talented, man. I don't necessarily think, and maybe this is me needing to dive into the tape a little bit more, but I just don't think that CJ is special. But I think he's really good. So I think he could be what a Jared Goff has been at the NFL level. And I think if the Houston Texans can get a guy like Jared Goff or something like that, you could do worse. And it's definitely an upgrade from Davis Mills. Now, later in this episode, I'm going to give you guys another weapon for him, but I do want to say that getting him with Nico Collins and Brandon Cooks for now, we don't know if Brandon Cooks is going to get traded, but Brandon Cooks, Nico Collins, and possibly Mechie, there's worse receiving rooms to get handed to you as a rookie. And Dameon Pierce isn't awful either. So I do think they also have some really good offensive linemen. They do have Laramie Tunsil and some other guys there. I can't remember the other guy who plays right tackle. I think his name's Titus or something like that. But good offensive line, good situation. The second quarterback off the board with the second pick in the draft. That's CJ Stroud for me for the Houston Texans. Let's talk everybody's favorite quote unquote social media quarterback right now. And let's talk Will Levis. The comparisons are all over the place, man. You hear people saying the next Josh Allen, and then you hear people saying Zach Wilson. Like, I don't think anybody knows what to expect out of Will Levis, but regardless, you have him going to the Las Vegas Raiders, and I have him going to the Carolina Panthers. So tell me why, and I guess where Levis is going to get drafted by the Las Vegas Raiders.
I think they got the 7th pick, right?
They do.
Yeah, so I think they're going to stay at 7. I think they'll take him there. I think he has a massive arm, and I think he's the most NFL-ready QB based off like the offense he was in at Kentucky. So I think his accuracy is questionable, but when you got Adams out there, it doesn't really matter. So I just think it's a good fit for him in Vegas. I think with the coaching from McDaniels, I think it's a good fit. I think he'll be all right over there.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I have him going to Carolina. I also don't think that they would have to trade up to go get him. I think he might be there on the board for him at 9. And that's just looking at some of the teams that are picking, man. I feel like this year in the top 10, there's maybe 3 teams that might need a quarterback that are going to be drafting. So there really isn't going to be a ton of situations, I feel like, where teams have to trade up. But regardless, I have them getting or I have Levis going to Carolina at 9. I think Frank Reich's going to go get his guy, new coaching staff. They know they need a quarterback. Clearly, there's nobody there right now. I think the best quarterback on the roster currently is Matt Corral. And look, I'm not a hater of Matt Corral. I actually kind of like Matt Corral, but he's not a franchise guy. You shoot for ceiling here. You hope that you're going to get the next best thing. Like you said, huge arm. He's mobile. He has the size that you're looking for. Really, like we've talked about, the ceiling is a Justin Herbert, Josh Allen prototype. That's really what the ceiling is. And I know you might want to kill me when I say this, but you give him DJ Moore, man, and this is probably the best quarterback that DJ Moore would have had in his career up to this point. And I know we always say that, but it might really be true. And DJ Moore is really quarterback friendly, I feel like. I also do think that there's going to be some additional work that needs to happen. It's not the prettiest of landing spots outside of that. I think the offensive line needs a little bit of work. They did get Icky. I can't remember his last name, but it's Icky. Last year, they drafted him. He plays tackle. But outside of that, there's not a lot on that offensive line. He may have to use his legs here in Carolina, but ultimately, it's what we want for fantasy football. And yeah, man, I can't think of a different spot for him. This is my best spot for Will Levis. And then we have the last quarterback that we're going to talk about today. And it feels like his name is being tweeted and talked about a million times a minute at this rate. Everybody's most talked about sleeper quarterback that's probably not a sleeper at this point. I mean, he's becoming one of the most hyped quarterback prospects in the class. But Anthony Richardson, out of Florida, you have him going to Indy. I have him going to Detroit. So you tell me, why is he going to Indy, and why is that a good fit?
I'm a Colts fan, so I think this is more wishful thinking. I think he's the most raw out of all the QBs in the draft, but I think he has the highest ceiling. I'm not a big fan of most of these QBs, but I've seen on tape that his upside is tremendous. So he could be a bust, but he could also be the next big thing. And I think with us bringing in the Coach Shane, I think he's similar to Hurts. Hurts came in pretty raw, needed work as a passer. And I think with that system, I think that might be the QB we're targeting because Irsay's blowing a little smoke screen.
Fair enough. Now, I do want to bring up the point. Jalen Hurts sat his whole first season for the most part. And if you guys draft Anthony Richardson, is he playing right away, or what are you guys doing at QB?
History says we're going to bring in somebody old, so I wouldn't be surprised if Rodgers signs a 1-year deal there,
or a Matt Ryan extension.
Phillip Rivers come out of retirement. I don't know what's going on over there. So hopefully he starts from day one, but I don't see that.
Bring in Baker Mayfield.
Maybe.
I don't know, man. But hey, I don't hate it. Like I said, all the arguments I had for Bryce Young at Indy, you could say the same thing for Richardson. Now I have him going to the Lions, and I feel like this landing spot for me is something that I've been talking to you about for a little while now, and it's just Detroit kind of has it put together, and everybody's been waiting. Last year, everybody was like, well, they might go get a quarterback, and they didn't. And this year, everybody's like, well, they might go get a quarterback, and if they do, why not go get the guy that, like you said, has a huge ceiling, but possibly needs to have a little bit of work? You have Jared Goff still on contract. You bring in Anthony Richardson, let him learn behind Jared Goff, let him get a year in the NFL, put it under his belt, turn the reins over next year when Jared Goff is a free agent, and you have Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DeAndre Swift, and whoever else they end up adding, potentially one more we talk about today. And you just and a phenomenal offensive line, like one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. And Anthony Richardson might be a cheat code at that point. So I do think that if Detroit were to swing at any of these quarterbacks, it should be for a guy that has a huge ceiling and needs some time, because they're not going to not play Jared Goff this year. I know that. They're going to play Jared Goff. So take the swing. I think they're going to be too good to be in this conversation next year. So you're not going to be able to go get a rookie quarterback next year. The Caleb Williams, the Drake Mays, they're not going to be there. You're going to be too good. You're in the running for winning the division. People have you as the betting favorite to win the division. Take the swing now. You have the 6th pick in the draft.
Yeah, when I saw you picked him, I was like, whew, that's a great spot.
I think it's the best situation for him. Now, I do have 2 running backs I want to talk about. So let's talk about the one that everybody knows. This is America's sweetheart. This is who everybody's been tanking for. This is the hype train of all hype trains at the running back position, Bijan Robinson. Out of Texas, I have him going to the Dallas Cowboys. Now, don't kill me, because I created this graphic and we planned this video before Tony Pollard was mentioned to have, or be in the rumor to be getting tagged tonight. Now you have him going to the Buffalo Bills. So I want to hear from you why he would be a great fit in Buffalo. And I'll give you my reasoning for Dallas and then audible this just a tiny bit for you.
All right. I mean, I just feel year after year, the Bills are a top team, but can't get over the hump. And I think that's a product of not having balance on offense. It's Josh Allen to dig, Josh Allen to somebody, Josh Allen running the ball. It's all Josh Allen. I know they drafted Cook last year, but I don't think he solved the problem. So I think with Bijan being everybody's saying can't miss generational talent, I think that finally gives them the balance they need. It keeps Josh from the fear. I think War said in your other video that he fears Josh Allen might get hurt later on down the line. You have to establish and get a running back now. And I think he's the best fit. And I think that puts him over the hump, and they could possibly win a Super Bowl next year with it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue. I do think I'm on record multiple times already saying that I think Bijan is generational. Hell, I think a YouTube short went out today where I was literally pumping him up as where I said he's probably my RB1 right now in Dynasty Fantasy Football, and he hasn't played a snap. So I'm high on him, man, and I think he's going to be fantastic. Look, I wanted him to go to Dallas. And I've been kind of saying all off season that I didn't want Pollard to get a contract. And you've been telling me he's going to get a contract. And I've been saying I don't want it because I want Bijan Robinson to stay in Texas and go to the Dallas Cowboys. I feel like with the history of the Dallas Cowboys, wanting to utilize that running game, wanting to make that a big part of their identity, Bijan Robinson would feast in Dallas. Zeke's getting to the end of his career, I think, as a starter at least. And Pollard looked like he was on the way out for the most part. It looks like he's going to be tagged, so this isn't going to happen. Now, I wouldn't put that Bijan to Dallas is at a 0% chance, even if Pollard gets tagged. I wouldn't put that as a 0% chance. I think there still is a chance that Jerry likes this guy. Now, I would audible and I would say that most likely if Pollard and when Pollard goes back to Dallas, I think the most likely scenario is that Bijan ends up going to a division rival and plays in Philadelphia. That team is ready to win. Great offensive line, just like we said. They were just playing in a Super Bowl, but they didn't get it done. Bijan Robinson, generational, man. He is Miles Sanders times 10. And I think Bijan Robinson plays in that Super Bowl. They probably win, if I'm just being honest. And so I think he's a difference maker. Philly would be phenomenal for him. I wanted Dallas, but I'm going to audible to Philly. So let's go with the other running back in the class, Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, we just talked about Philly. Coming out of Alabama, you have him going to the Eagles. Now, I have him going to the Miami Dolphins. Tell me why you think that he should end up in Philly. And is this first-round draft capital?
I think they get him in the second round. I think the only possible RB going in the first is Bijan. I don't think the Eagles use it on RB, but I do think they're letting Miles walk. And I think we saw in the Super Bowl from Gainwell that he's not it. So with behind that O-line, I think with the offense that they run, I think with Jamir in that offense, it's a recipe for fantasy goodness. So I'd be looking to get him probably over Bijan at that point. Even though I think Bijan going to the Bills, I still think the offense is Josh Allen.
Fair enough. So now I got to ask this because I got to open up this can of worms. Do you think Gibbs is a better running back prospect than Bijan?
Possibly. I remember, if like 2-3 years back, you was talking about Jamir before he started
when he was playing for Georgia Tech.
Yeah. So you was already talking about him, and then now you're hearing his name more because he transferred over to Alabama, and it's possible that he can turn out to be the better prospect. Bijan's getting all the hype, and he's falling under the radar, but he might be just as good, if not better.
Yeah, fair enough. I want to find it, and I might find it and just put it over this video as a screenshot. But I think I tweeted about a year ago now that when the news broke that Jahmyr Gibbs was going to be transferring to Alabama, I said at this point, Jahmyr Gibbs will become a household name and people will finally understand how good Jahmyr Gibbs is. It was something along those lines, but I know that I tweeted when he put in his transfer, and I knew that it was about to be mayhem for Jahmyr Gibbs because he is freaking talented. Now, I have him going to the Miami Dolphins, and I think primarily it's because, look, the Miami Dolphins have nobody at running back, literally nobody on the roster. And so I think that they need to go get a guy that can help kind of balance that offense a little bit. We've seen at times that offense had been super, super pass heavy. And even though some of those passes were screens or short routes, it was crazy sometimes how often that Tua was dropping back and throwing the football. So I do think that it would be beneficial for their offense to get a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, who is really good in the passing game, is going to be friendly for Tua. He's just the prototype that seems like he would fit in a San Francisco-esque scheme by Mike McDaniel. And so I just think it's a great fit. This is second-round draft capital. This is not first round. Obviously, Miami forfeited their first-round pick this offseason because of the tampering or the whatever things that were going on with Brady, they ended up forfeiting a first-round pick. So, and tanking allegations, a whole bunch of other stuff. There was a lot of stuff that happened with Miami, but I do think that they could use a quality running back. And we've seen today just some of the news. Tony Pollard, Josh Jacobs, some of these guys are already getting tagged, and that free agent rookie running back market is losing some of its lust. So maybe they go and draft a guy.
Maybe.
So, all right. Well, let's talk about our 3 wide receivers, probably the consensus top 3 wide receivers in the class, and then we'll finally get to the top tight end of this class, or most people's top tight end. But let's talk Jaxon Smith-Njigba out of Ohio State. I've seen some people have him as the wide receiver 1. I've seen some people say that he's not good because of him missing pretty much the whole year with that injury. So you have him going to the Chicago Bears. I have him going to the Houston Texans. Tell me how Chicago gets a pick, because right now they're sitting at number 1. So tell me how they're going to get a pick to get Jaxon Smith-Njigba.
I think they trade out of the 1 spot. I don't know who they traded to at this point, but if they can get 2 firsts out of this deal, I think they definitely take it. Everybody has them taking defense, but we all had the Bengals taking offensive tackle when they took Chase. I think at this point, offense wins ships. I mean, it's not defense anymore. So I think that he definitely needs a receiver. He's running way too much. He's going to continue to get injured unless they get him one. And I think JSN immediately becomes a wide receiver 1 over there and can get 130 plus targets.
Yeah, fair enough. How do you think the Bears have to? I guess my question is, how far back do you have to trade? Do you still have to stay in that top 15? You think Jaxon Smith is a top 15 prospect in the class, or do you think they can go more that 15 to 30 range? Or do you think that Jaxon isn't even a first-round receiver?
I think he's a first-round receiver. I think he's top 20. So it's risky to go below 15, but I think between 15 to 20, they probably still could get him. It depends on what the other teams think about the Quentin Johnson, Jordan Addisons of the world. So it just depends if they want to take that risk. I think they're getting a receiver for sure. I got JSN, but if he's not on the board at 18, I could see him pivoting. But I think they get a receiver and that defensive player they're trying to get.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, maybe Carolina trades up. You said they trade up to draft Stroud. So maybe Carolina trades up to the 1. They draft Stroud at the 101. And there at 9 is where JSN goes to the Bears.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I have him going to the Houston Texans. And I think that this would be pick 12. I think that they would stay put with pick 2 and pick 12. Pick 2, I already had them get CJ Stroud out of Ohio State. Let's give him his best friend, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, at number 12. And let's kind of replicate this trend that we've been seeing go on in the NFL, where college quarterbacks are getting college wide receiver teammates, and they're continuing that chemistry at the next level. I think it just makes sense. They need to go add a wide receiver to that room. We've kind of already mentioned that Brandon Cooks possibly could be getting traded this offseason. He clearly doesn't want to be there. Whether the Texans want him to be there or not is really, it's up to them at this point. But I think if they do trade Brandon Cooks, even if they don't trade Brandon Cooks, they need another wide receiver, and adding Jaxon Smith-Njigba would instantly become the wide receiver 1 on the Houston Texans, and pairing him with CJ Stroud, I don't think they would skip a beat. Jaxon would be phenomenal. And I think at the end of the day, people worry too much about where prospects are going. But as you have said, and as I have said at times, talent wins, especially at the wide receiver position, because good players get targets. That's just the way it is. And so Jaxon Smith is a good player, a goddamn good player. And he's going to get targets, especially from his buddy CJ Stroud here in Houston.
Agreed.
All right, let's talk about Jordan Addison, wide receiver out of USC. Now, hey, we just talked the Texans. You have him going to Houston. I have him going to the New York Giants. What is this pick for the Houston Texans? Do you have him going here at, is that 12th overall pick?
Yeah. I have him paired up there with Bryce, because I got Bryce Young going to the Texans. I do like the analysis you gave with CJ with his teammate, but I think that ends up being Marvin Harrison next year for him. But yeah, I like Addison going to the Texans to immediately be the wide receiver one for Bryce Young. I think Cooks gets traded. Then all they have over there is Nico. So I think he goes in there and be the wide receiver one, gives Bryce a target year one, and they go from there.
How do you feel about Mechie? Because you didn't mention him there. Do you think Mechie's – what do you think about Mechie?
I think he's a good value right now in dynasty leagues if you can try to obtain him because he was a second-round pick, but he hasn't played at all. So I liked him a lot at Alabama. So I'm not sure. I don't know if he's going to be the next Justin Ross. I don't know if he's going to keep having these injuries derail his career where he shouldn't be playing football at all. It's just a concern with that for me.
Yeah. I mean, there was times where I think you even said that he was the best wide receiver on Bama, and they had J-Mo. So, yeah, I think he's a value. But regardless of the point, I have Jordan Addison going to the New York Giants. And, hey, they just announced that they're going to be cutting Kenny Golladay. I know that doesn't really matter, but, hey, they were trying to swing at a wide receiver, and they've been trying to kind of swing at a wide receiver. There were rumors of Odell Beckham wanting to go back to the New York Giants, and maybe there being some mutual interest there. They drafted Wan'Dale Robinson in the second round last year. They've been kind of trying to get this wide receiver position figured out, and they had a horrible season of injuries for the wide receivers there in New York. Darius Slayton pretty much led the way. I think getting them a true alpha wide receiver one, somebody who is reliable as Jordan Addison, is as good of a player as Jordan Addison, and is just a dog, man. I think getting them somebody like this, it's going to be beneficial to that entire organization, and it's going to be very friendly for Daniel Jones if they end up getting him and bringing him back. Now, I do have this pick being in the first round. This is first round draft capital to me. This is probably pick 25. They may end up having to go a little bit earlier to get this guy because I really do think that Jordan Addison, once he starts working out tomorrow at the combine, I think he's going to start flying up draft boards because I think he's going to test really well. Probably not as well as the next guy that we're going to talk about, but I do think that Jordan Addison I think he's a damn good wide receiver, man. And I think that New York would be a great fit for him.
You fix that field.
Yeah, fix that field for sure. Oh, and they just cut Sterling Shepard, so they do need to continue adding. But now I said somebody who's going to test like a freak. This guy is a freak athlete. I'm not the biggest fan of the game. Now, I don't think he's a bad player by any means, but let's talk about Quentin Johnston out of TCU. He's going to test crazy. Like, I know he's going to test crazy. He's big. He's going to run fast. He's going to have a high vert. Somebody's going to fall in love with him. You have him going to the New England Patriots. I have him going to the Baltimore Ravens. Go ahead and tell me why he would be a good fit here in New England for you.
Quentin, he's a good at everything, master of none. I think he's going to be a volume possession receiver. And who loves those kind of guys? The Patriots. They need that kind of guy to move the chains on third down. Mac needs that little safety blanket. I think he can get open enough or win the battles with a corner on a little easy 3rd and 5, 3rd and 7 kind of play. So I think it's a good fit for him there. They definitely need a receiver. I think they let Jacoby's free agent. Devontae is Devontae. So, yeah, I think it's a good fit for him. They definitely need a wide receiver, and then you can move Mac finally.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Now, I do have him going to Baltimore, and for some reason, maybe it's the purple. He just feels like he's going to be a Baltimore Raven to me. I do think, Eric DeCosta has already come out and said that, hey, we need to upgrade this wide receiver room. Him and Rashad Bateman were blasting each other the other day for whatever reason, but it's the point of the whole argument is that Baltimore has openly admitted that they need to get better at wide receiver. And hey, sitting there at 22, you might have a guy like Quentin Johnston on the board. And if you do have a guy like Quentin Johnston on the board, I don't see why you wouldn't take him. I think he would complement Rashad Bateman's game pretty well, especially because Quentin Johnston is super athletic. He's a big wide receiver, big play kind of guy. And Rashad Bateman is a little bit more smooth, a little bit more of a route technician, and that complements each other really well. We've seen that happen, and we've seen that work, especially for teams like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where you have a guy like Mike Evans, who is very big and is that big play, and then you have a route technician like Chris Godwin. I think you could come up with or try to replicate that Tampa Bay offensive system in Baltimore by getting Quentin Johnston to pair with Rashad Bateman. If Rashad Bateman hasn't burned any bridges, I don't know if that's going to be a deal or anything, but I do think Quentin Johnston would be a fantastic fit. Is Lamar going to be there? TBD. But I think regardless of if Lamar is there or not, receiver is still a position of interest. So I do think Quentin Johnston would benefit from going to the Baltimore Ravens. Now let's talk about our last guy here. This is the last guy, and it's there's a couple tight ends in this class. You and I have both talked about how this tight end class is pretty good. But this guy is, for the most part, everybody's tight end one. And we're talking about Notre Dame tight end, Michael Mayer. I told you off camera a little bit, man. I am falling in love with this prospect more and more every single day. You have him going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I have him going to the Detroit Lions. Talk to me why he would be going to the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I just found out that Ingram might be getting franchise tagged. So that was after I had already made this selection.
A Pollard situation.
But he made me make that selection because Ingram was like a cast off. Nobody thought he was good anymore. And then he went to Jacksonville and he became, I think, a top 5 tight end last season, fantasy wise. So it's a very fantasy friendly offense for the tight end position. And then I just could hear the commentators on the broadcast for years to come. T-Law to Mayer. T-Law to Mayer. Again.
Very
T-Law to Mayer. So that's why I had him going to the Jags. I thought it was a good fit. I thought he'd succeed in that offense. But if they keep Ingram, then, I guess he won't be going there.
Where would you audible if just off the top of the head? Where would you audible?
Well, the audible, probably the Packers. They haven't had a tight end, I feel like, since Jimmy Graham, probably. I don't know. I don't even know who their tight end is at this point. They don't use tight end. They don't even use them. So maybe that's a good fit, especially if Rodgers leaving for a young quarterback safety blanket. It's a good fit for him.
Fair enough. Is Mayer going to be a first-round draft pick?
He probably should be, but I don't think he will be.
Okay. I cannot see a situation where Mayer falls out of the first round. I think teams are going to salivate over this guy. And I just think personally, we devalue tight end at the fantasy football level at times because we want to have the Travis Kelce's of the world that score a ton of fantasy points. But I think that NFL teams value tight end significantly more than we do. So I know as the fantasy community is like, we don't care about a tight end or whatever. NFL GMs care. This is an extension of the offensive line, and this is a receiving weapon. So you got to be good at all of that. And having a good guy, the George Kittles of the world, that can do both, we've seen how beneficial that can be to a franchise. So I do think that Michael Mayer is going to fly up draft boards. Now I have him going to the Detroit Lions. And to me, I would have this happening with their first round pick at pick 18. This feels very similar to when they selected TJ Hawkinson a few years ago. And speaking of TJ Hawkinson, hey, they just sent him out of town. So, hey, you have a need at that position. Michael Mayer might be a better tight end prospect than TJ Hawkinson. And you have a guy like Dan Campbell, who was a tight end coach before he was a head coach. And hey, maybe they need to build this offensive line and get a guy in there who's gritty and is able to give another receiving weapon, especially if you draft a guy like Anthony Richardson. So, hey, I think the Detroit Lions would be a fantastic fit for Michael Mayer.
I like it.
So, all right, man, I just want to say thank you, really. And I want to let everybody know that we're going to have more content like this. We're trying to push out content every single day. We do have a Discord. It's a free Discord. If you want to hop up in there and talk fantasy football, post some of your trades so they can be reviewed on the trade show. We're going to have a trade show coming out next week. That's going to be episode 3 of our series. So if you want to join that, go ahead and join that. It's free. Like I said, and post your trades and do all of that stuff. Talk with everybody in there. Sometimes I post league openings and things like that. So if you want to join leagues, you can join leagues with me in there, or people from the League FFB. I do also want to say, if you like the content, you want to support the content, the best thing you can do for us is to like the videos, comment on the videos, and subscribe to the account. That really just helps us with the YouTube algorithm. And as corny as that is, or as sometimes viewers don't want to hear that, that is the bread and butter of YouTube. And if we want to continue growing, we need to have our videos recommended to new users. So liking the video, commenting on the video, and subscribing, that is the best thing you can do. So show some support, hit those buttons for me. And really, anything else from you, Brandon, before we get out of here?
Man, share the video too, man. If you share it, that's how it gets out too. You know, everything we got in this world is word of mouth. So a lot of things, a lot of people I follow is because somebody shared it with me. So if you like the content, man, share it with your friends and family, and then get it out there.
Appreciate it, man. Hey, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for joining me, Brandon. We'll see you guys on the next video.